Peter Han is one of the best professional artists and teachers around. He teaches at Art Center, wrote a really awesome art book, and he's just, look at his work. Good stuff. Well, at Lightbox, we got him to do a demo at our booth, and we recorded it for you to enjoy. So take it away, Peter.
Today, I'm going to draw for you guys a little bit, and I'll even explain a little bit of process and thought as to what I'm thinking as I do it. I'm going to be doing an illustration straight on drawing with a bit more detail work. I have 1 hour. So in that hour, I've had to think about generally what to do. First questions I get is, do I know exactly what I'm going to draw? I have no picture in my head at all. I have an idea. And the idea was that I wanted to draw something fantasy, I want a character, and I want a creature. Now what that is, I'll figure it out as I do it. I may mess up, and I apologize if I do, but it might come out really cool too. That's the excitement about this. I love adapting with the mess ups. And the thing is, I am going to make tons of mistakes. But if I tell you what they are, you'll know. But if I don't tell you, you'll have no idea. Am I going to construct as I draw now? Yes and no. Let's just draw for a little bit, and you'll start to see what I'm doing with this information. As I get this in place, people ask, why aren't you starting with like circles and construction and the underlay drawing? Again, how do you not have a direct image in your head of what you're doing if you haven't studied it, if you haven't thumbnailed it? And I have not thumbnailed or drawn this ever before in my life. So have I drawn dwarf-like characters? Yeah. Have I drawn animals and creatures that might be entailed to this story? Absolutely. But have I drawn this very image? Never. So I am now problem solving it as I am doing it right now. I find that exciting because it's something new of an experience and it's something I'm always learning from. Right now we have this kind of old dwarf-like character we're going to put right here, and they're going to be stunted and short, kind of broad, large armor sets. He's going to hold a big hammer in front of him. And I think he's going to look a little bit grumpy, and I'll put like a crazy mount animal on this side as he's looking at him. Let's spread out the shapes. And the shape language I'm already thinking about, well, think about what kind of shapes you'd want to use for a dwarf. Think about like some films, cartoons, comics that have been out beforehand too. My favorite was obviously Lord of the Rings. Yeah, Weta did such a great job. Think about shape language, the meaning of shape, and the things of design, costume to creature to environment, architecture, culture. Dwarves in that movie, very square. A lot of squares, right? From the silhouette to the costuming to the weapons to the patterns, everywhere. So I'm going to reinforce that also because that shape language makes sense to me. Now, does that mean that you can't use other shapes for dwarves? Of course not. That's the artist's perspective, and that's you storytelling. But I want an immediate response, and I only have an hour. So in that hour, I have a deadline now. And the deadline is the most important. I gotta get this drawing done for you guys in the hour. So I don't wanna just start something and not have anything completed to some degree. I gotta be able to predict how much time I need to be able to make decisions quick and fast, and hopefully have something that's accomplished to the job I was given, which is to draw for you guys. All right, now we're going to the shoulder section. He's gonna have some broad hair coming down this direction here. I like the idea of having like braids maybe in the hair also. Again, am I designing right now? No. I'm trying to maybe tell a story. I'm playing with things like character relationships, drawing for fun, and there's no reason why you can't draw for fun either. The tool that I'm using currently to do this is a felt tip brush pen made by Sakura. This is a Pigma FB brush pen. And this is my favorite currently right now because it's very flexible, gives me a lot of line variation, and it's permanent. So if I do watercolor on something like this, I get a lot of freedom to be able to move around. All right, I'm gonna put the arm coming forward now. Here's the deltoid coming up, bottom of the arm, elbow. So I guess now the question is, how do you train to do stuff like this, right? Because again, I'm not constructing, but am I? In a way, I am. Now let me tell you the secret towards how I'm doing this. I'm not gonna say that this is the answer what all artists are doing, but for me, in my perspective, I'm always training to communicate, to verbalize stuff. So here's how I'm doing this. There is construction, okay? A minimal amount of construction. Am I going in there with a circle, box, line to construct this stuff? No. But these lines that I'm placing down are shortcut constructions. It gives me a guide that I can follow and understand. This right here that line to this line gives me form turn and an end point for the armor. Now I know where things are placed, the direction of the volume, and the shape language behind it, all in 3 lines. Now most people need a full construction, but with enough training and visualizing your skill set and objects you're drawing, turning things in space, you don't need as much information to draw from. So you become what? Efficient. You become fast. And that's how I actually accomplish these kinds of things, and that's what I also train to do also. I look at references, there's nothing wrong with that, and from those references I train my eyes to look for things that visually describe a story or information on a minimal level of a couple of lines of shapes that I can then match up to. That then also goes back to the idea of speed. How do I get speed? I'm familiar. I'm familiar with these objects, I'm familiar with the shapes, I'm familiar with the character type, and I'm able to then express it without really thinking about it. I'm using that experience to execute this as quickly as possible. This then also feeds into massive confidence. Confidence in drawing, confidence in storytelling, and also at the end of it, really just having fun with what you're doing. So other advices in terms of what you could do in terms of excelling your drawing skills to do stuff like this. Fail, as every artist will tell you, right? But it's not seeking failure, it's about experimentation and then fail. And that experimentation is bending and challenging your skill sets to try stuff that you couldn't do before. Most people will shy away from it. Oh, I can't draw this, so I can't draw that. And I'm only gonna stick with the comfortable stuff. Well, consider placing yourself in an uncomfortable situation, break the rules if you have to, mess it up, and then pick it apart. Have the right awareness of asking the questions of, well, what do I like about it, and what do I not like about it? In most situations in drawing and design, the key thing that I find that people make a mistake on that need to improve, proportion, okay? Proportion is the #1 thing on that. Let's give it some more rag. I'm gonna put some armor set in the front. I'll rub this in, and he's gonna have his leg coming forward and down. Now the paper I'm using for this is a large-scale watercolor paper. I use cold press. This one right here specifically is a Strathmore brand, and I do favor that particular paper. I'm not a big fan of a hot press. I like cold press paper. A lot of the sketchbooks I use in my classes are actually right next door. Cottonwood Arts, I like their stuff a lot. Is there anything wrong then also with the materials to draw with things like markers and pens, or even pencil? To help you then lock in things, to help you then bridge over to a more finalized image? Of course not. And as a student, I used to draw that way all the time. Penciling something, marker drawing, and putting inking on top of it. But from there, always find a way to take away the crutches of the tool and use it to its advantage, which is to help you build confidence and familiarity. Sketching with intention is a huge element of what I like to teach. And it's about knowing what this piece is for and knowing when I'm supposed to end, right? If I have a very strong intention of what I'm doing, then I know when to end it also. Okay, let's put another creature over here. How about some kind of boar-like animal? Starting from the top, I could start anywhere and build it from this. Let's give it really big tusks on this side. And as you'll notice, as we mentioned it back in the beginning, as I said, I'm not going to point out to you guys the mistakes that I'm making. However, at the same time, I will. Because if you do know the mistakes I'm making, you'll also understand how I'm able to also let them go and use them to my advantage. Is this area of the ear of the boar perfect? No, it's not. Are those lines exactly what I wanted? No, they're not also. But do I use it to my advantage? Absolutely, because I can force it and push it in a direction where it reads better as a shape. So I don't look at it being like, oh, I messed up, I gotta start over, I feel bad about it. I don't have that kind of mentality. So from there, I'm able to always move forward. I never feel frustrated, and the end piece doesn't matter to me. I don't care how this is gonna turn out because I know I can do it better another time. By drawing this once, I could draw this for you again, right afterwards, even faster, even more confidently. I can even adjust it to make it even stronger of an image. But it's that experience that helped that. Again, problem. I'm running out of space. Most people get anxious about that. Oh man, I gotta adjust it, try and start it over again. No, I'm gonna, you know what, turn the body of the boar towards the camera. Let's go this direction. Now I can fit him in. There's always a problem-solving method behind the drawing. So again, in stuff like this, I find live drawing to be very enjoyable. Most people, when they draw in class with me, they're, again, nervous. Oh, I don't like drawing in public. I don't want to draw my sketches in front of people. You know, it's not going to look very good. Compared to what other people are doing, I don't feel like I'm good enough. That mentality will always be there if you hold on to that. You have to make sure you really hold on to the process, if anything else. It's always a learning experience. And you are the only one that will ever see the mistakes. Always. But how you look at it and how you project it is what's going to make your further outcome more successful, and also it'll continue your drive to pursue and have the curiosity to build your skill. So I think this is pretty fun now. Got a dwarf-like character. He's on the ground plane right here. Let's put the perspective going this way. Let it go like this, 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 this. There's the construction of it. There's the eye line. So you might think adding that kind of stuff in there, oh, doesn't that detract away from the image? No, I'm communicating to you guys. I'm showing you a demo to basically explain my visual thoughts and internal thoughts. So yeah, I could have left that stuff out and drawn things like a landscape and rock structures, but I think as a viewer, this helps. It shows you what I'm looking at. Because I see it in my head, but now I can actually now show you visually. I feel like a lot of artists can draw beautiful things, but they have a hard time explaining exactly what they're thinking, or what they're doing, or how they even verbalize it. Part of that advice then is to practice that yourself. If you like to draw, any opportunity you get to explain to people your thought process, your ideas, your method of working, how you like to explore, it will get you even stronger of making the proper choices, and you start to really truly understand why you're doing certain things. This has been 15 minutes. 15, okay? So when people say we're in figure drawing, I got 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a very long time to draw. 15 minutes, it's forever to me. An hour, an eternity of drawing. I could do so much here now. This is established. I could keep adding more stuff. Let's keep adding. And you know, I think it's still base. Okay, I'm gonna bring in some other pens, and I'm gonna push my darks, values, hatching, elements of details, and I'm gonna start to group everything together. All right, as I add some elements of the environment, some vegetation, I can really dress up this scene if I want to. Maybe there's a little water ray over here. Just random things in the background. Here's his weapon set. As you'll notice, I tend to jump around quite a bit. I don't stay in one area. I move from one spot to the other, to the other. It's one layer after the other. That's why most of my friends tend to call me a printer. As you'll notice, block, 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 square, square. If anybody has any mentions of comments or things you want to shout out, you're more than welcome to. I'll look up every now and again if anybody wants to raise their hand also.
How do you go about studying something you've never drawn before?
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's always something you've never drawn before, you know? And it could be even things that are familiar, some things you've actually seen but have never drawn. So how do you even approach stuff like this? Well, in my classes that I teach, the fundamental basic is not about drawing what you see. You're filtering it. How do I interpret that as a primitive form to build a visual library? Not about drawing it as it looks like, because you're not a camera. It's not about drawing it realistically. And every sort of drawing or painting is an interpretation of it through the artist's eyes and brain. So then you gotta find a way to simplify it so that you can also use it as a tool for something else. If you drew me, let's say the animal was a Komodo dragon. Have you ever drawn a Komodo dragon before? Do you even know what a Komodo dragon looks like? Okay, you have a picture in your mind. Now, okay, you can understand what it is. You will study at the zoo. Great. And you study it, you draw it, what it looks like. And I took away those drawings and I said, now draw it for me again in memory. It'd be really hard. But if you drew the most basic primitive shapes that represent the Komodo dragon, it could be a box, squares, circles, whatever. And I took away that drawing and said, now recreate those shapes again. It might be a little bit easier. Now, given time, you slowly add more details and become stronger about those memories of detail work. But in the beginning, if you don't know how to even just build it, the details won't matter. Could I build you these structures of shapes very primitively? Of course. Do I need them right now for myself? Not necessarily. But in the beginning as a student, did I do that? 100%. The other side of that is get outside and look at the real things. If I said, if you've never seen a Komodo dragon before in life, go to a zoo, maybe you'll find one. There's one here in LA, right? There's a male Komodo dragon over there. He's about 20 years old, and he's a breeder type. If you don't know anything about Komodo dragons, offshoot, they're called the parthenogenesis. And they're an animal that can actually recreate, females can, lay their own eggs and fertilize them. They can clone themselves. Crazy stuff. So what happens then is you start to then draw and you get curious about the things. And you start researching about the stuff. And you become more familiar with the subject, and that locks in that memory. And you become easier to draw because you become, again, familiar. But the simplicity is the main thing. You have a question?
Why exactly are you drawing stuff here and here when you still have stuff to finish in the middle?
Yeah, because it's about the finish about the entire thing, the big picture, not the small thing. If you finish that one area, do you really know what that finish is? Maybe not. And maybe you come back to it, it's like, oh, that's not finished yet. And what happens? You keep doing that and you overwork the piece. So don't worry about the end piece. Work on it through a layer, think about the intention, and get it to a point where it accomplishes the job in the deadline of how much time you have, right? Not every piece is about rendering it to a photorealistic level. Because here's the thing, I could stop here and tell you that this is a finished drawing. You know why? Because my intention was to show you the shapes, the general composition, the placement of the figures. That's my intention. I'm done. Now if I said, my intention now is to include shadow shapes, referencing of materials, things like background. Well, I got a lot more to do. So I'm not finished yet. So my intention clearly drives me in a direction of a path. If you have never thought about what your intentions were in a drawing, then you're drawing blindly. You're drawing lost. And you never end, you don't know when to end. And again, I look at your stuff and you overwork it and you feel like, oh man, I didn't know when to stop. Should I give myself a timer? Well, that can help, but I think it's better to really think before. Now I'm kind of focusing it right up here. I'm using these kind of shadow shapes to block out separations. Foreground to middle ground within the subject matter. Considering things like cast shadows, possibly form shadows. Using shadow shapes to group areas together because my focus is up to the head, to the arm on the left, down into the hammer, back over to the bore. That's my direction I'm going to follow. So everything else around it, I'm going to block out in shadow. So I want to focus these areas. I thought about this already, okay? I've used one pen for the entire thing. Let's group. As soon as I see myself noodling, stop, pull back a little bit. Think broad, okay? As soon as you noodle, you're now kind of basically kind of fussing with it. You're going back and forth. Go back and just group it. I'm gonna just group it, right? Once you get to this point, a huge element that you have to train your mind is commitment. Commit to the line, commit to the shapes, commit to the composition. See it to the end. Even if you feel like, oh, I don't know if it's going the right direction, and you might not have a clear picture, take it to the end and mess it up all the way. That way you now have something to question and break down and analyze. Now going in there with the subtlety and the care of these areas of this wrapping and material fabric, wrapping around the arm of this dwarf. And of course, if you had no intention as to what you were trying to do, that question still remains. When do I know when to stop? If I don't have a clear idea of what I'm going for, as soon as you ask yourself that question, what am I trying to do here? Stop right there, because then you don't know. Do something else. Come back to this when you feel more confident. And then finish it. Things don't have to be completed in one sitting. Give it time to marinate in your brain. Step back, look at it from a distance. Don't go nose in, you'll get tunnel vision, right? Show it to other people, share it. Hey, what do you think about this? What's your response? The response, I guarantee you, most times is positive. Hey, that looks really cool, man. And most people are looking for a very harsh critique, right? Students come up to me and be like, give me your hardest critique. Tear it apart. That makes no sense to me. Because the idea is that I also want to give you constructive criticism. We can't only focus on the negative. We got to focus on the balance of what's not working, but what is working. Change the stuff that's making mistakes, but be consistent with the stuff you're doing good at. Do you even recognize what you're good at? Find your strengths and weaknesses, right? Stay positive in the mindset with the work you're creating. Have that interest and passion in the process. Share it with people. Build your community. Control the people that you want around you. If you have a positive people around you, it's going to create a positive environment. Here at Lightbox, there's nothing but positivity right now. Use it. If you are artists right now and you're at Lightbox and you haven't drawn a single thing, you made a mistake. You should be drawing right now, even now, right? You could be having your sketchbook and sketching something. That's something I love to do all the time. I would visit talks, demos from artists that I really respect, and I don't just sit there and watch them. Questions are good, but I'll draw with them. I'll sit there and actually get that mindset, that inspiration. Now I understand you guys are talking, there's a big group, so that's just me just talking, all right? So do what you can. I do Comic-Con in San Diego, and I've been doing that for about 13 years. And that show is so primarily driven by sales and buying stuff and merchandise. But shows like this is more driven towards education and learning and inspiration. Comic-Con can be the same way too, but that's a massive show. But stuff like this, take advantage of those moments. If you want to learn something, the best thing to do is get involved, talk to people, and not to the people that are behind the table, the person next to you. The person next to you is the most important connection. All right, now we're kind of fleshing all this stuff out. Again, he's the main focus as he goes in. I'm going to touch the board a little bit. We are now only half an hour in.
Do you usually work this quickly, or do you go faster for demos?
Do I tend to work this quickly when I'm drawing for myself? Yes. A lot of my pieces I complete are in an hour, typically. Now, is that because I'm in a rush? No. It's because I have a clear intention of what I'm trying to do. And I also do find this extremely fun. So I'm always driven to draw constantly. And I do draw practically every single day. And a question I got with the demo I had yesterday was about how many hours I should draw in a day. And that's not really important. Don't worry about that, okay? Because the question really is about, are you drawing every day? Not about how long you're drawing. You could draw 10 hours every day if you want to. That's great. You'll improve. But can you be consistent to that degree every single time? You will burn out, guaranteed. But if I draw every day and vary it, explore things, have focus and intention, it could be for hours or for even half an hour, right? 10 minutes. But at least I got to touch paper with pen. And before this, I was drawing another demo at my table. And the table I'm at is at 525. I'll be doing additional drawings like this one at my own. And I just draw for fun. Not for anything for selling or prints or anything like that. I just like to draw in front of people. And if you guys are here for the rest of the show, and find me if you have more questions, because I expect that you guys don't have questions right now. But if you do, come find me and ask. I'd be more than happy to give you my thoughts and advice from my perspective. All right. This guy's relatively done with the shadow shapes. I'm going to go down here up into the board. And then I'm going to start to go into the small little kind of bits and pieces. This is where I tend to kind of slow down a little bit, kind of being more attentive to the minor elements of things. All the sweeping movements, the speed comes from the very beginning. Again, you get that great dry brush with this pen. So it's very fine of a line. It can be very nice, rich and dark, but you can move quickly and get this dry brush. Let's go into the bore. General shadow directions going this way. Let's put shadow shapes behind it. And as it goes this direction, I'll put a little bit of emphasis on the head and less on the rest of the body. I want you guys to look right here. Now, these kinds of decision-making choices are not as apparent in the beginning, and they're also very difficult to make on the fly. So other things you can do to practice this kind of stuff is thumbnail it. A lot of thumbnails in practice, do rough sketches, figure out what those problems are, and present those questions as you develop them too. That way, when you get to the final piece, a lot of those things will be problem solved. And from there, you can continue to really just execute with the speed that you need. So I still thumbnail today, client work, personal work, projects. I will use thumbnail process. For personal sketching, I can just go straight in there. But if it's for something, I have to really problem solve it. And that's our job. If you want to be a conceptual designer, that's your job, problem solve. Problem solving the story, problem solving shape design, color sets, costuming, action and function, culture, the character traits and history, all that stuff and how they unify and link together. Anybody else have any other questions, comments, thoughts?
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Do you crosshatch shadow in the direction of the limb, or how do you approach that?
So there's me hatching with the direction of the arm. And so these are cross contours wrapping around the structure that you can follow to continue to increase volume. Now, does that mean you always have to do that? Not necessarily. But being consistent is important. If I choose to go with the direction of the volume and the area, and I break that rule and start flattening it, it'll conflict. So choose and be specific and consistent to the areas. If I'm gonna follow the form here, moving around that shape, I'm gonna do it over here also. Yeah. But in this area in the shadow, I went across because I wanted to flatten it. Shadow shape, exactly. But I'm consistent with it all the way through. So choices in terms of direction of line is very important for sure. So with stuff like this, it puts a little pinprick in my head, and eventually, as I go into the future, I'll probably actually create more illustrations and images pertaining to this theme. So a lot of times things pop into my head and I can't get it out until I draw it. It just stays stuck in there. There are times where I would think about something and I wouldn't stop thinking about it until I drew it. It could happen for months. It would stay there. Because I didn't have the opportunity to draw it, it'll stay in there for months. Other times I'll draw one thing and I'm so interested in it, I can't let it go. And all the work I produce for myself, or drawings and sketches, are constantly coming back to it until I've exhausted it. And then I move on, something else. Thinking about even how this facial hair is very blocky. The nose is blocky. The overall silhouette is blocky. External to internal, to the weapon. And this shape design, unfortunately, is not a formatted class that you can really find in a lot of places. There's no books based on it, but what I will tell you is that it is industry standard, knowing shape design. Studying brands and properties, movies, comics, games will help you with this. Looking at art books can give you that too. Many students get pieces and parts of it from different classes, but hopefully you can explore that on your own time. I could keep going on this and take it all the way to a full illustration. But I love developing new ideas and new sketches and drawings to explore. So what I actually might even do in the next half hour that we have is take out a new piece and maybe even use the same elements of stuff and redraw another piece. So now I'm like making marks, right? Indications of things. It's all the small stuff, little minor elements. All the big movements have been done. I think I can stop right there and move to a new piece. Let's get a new sheet of paper out. Why am I deciding to move on? I feel like this is done, in my opinion, because I accomplished what I needed to do. I set the figures, my intention was shadow shapes, indication of detail in the figure, moving this direction on the board. I told you guys just that. So, do I need to move forward any more than this? I mean, I could add more intricate details, more materials, more stuff in the background, but that was never my intention. So, I'm gonna stop. I wanna move on. Now I have time to do more drawing.
That was awesome. Big thanks to Peter Hahn for demoing for us at Lightbox Expo. And that's not it. We got one more video from Peter coming out tomorrow. So hit that subscribe button and smash or thrash or do whatever you want to that like button. We'll be here with the final video for this year's 12 Days of Proko.